What I want to discuss is image optimization for the web. The way you're going to approach imagery for online versus, I'd say, print or design, uh, really it revolves around the size of the image, because when you're printing something out, um, in the end, you're looking for that image to be the highest quality as it can be. So size, like the actual file size of that image, isn't that relevant to you, because once it gets, you'll have a huge image, it gets printed out, best quality ever, and that's essentially what you're looking for. You're looking for a good output. But on the web, keeping the size of the file as small as it can be while retaining the quality of the image that you're looking for is really the heart of optimizing images for the web. And the other thing that's important about optimizing images for the web is that it increases the user's experience visiting your site. Sometimes people think that, oh, it's fine. I'm going to put the images. I'm a photographer. I want my images online to be as the highest quality ever. And if the people have to wait to download those pictures, then that's what they're going to need to do. Well, that's a big mistake, because nobody wants to wait for images to slowly download. So the essence is keep them small. So there's really two major considerations that you want to do in that effort to optimize the photos. And the first is picture dimension. Now, the dimension of the picture needs to be the dimension you plan on presenting it online. So in my page, for example, you see that this image over here, Vannevar Bush, is set to 300 by 431. The width is 300, the height is 431 pixels, that is. Since that's the way I'm going to display this image on my page, that means that my native file that is right in here needs to be those dimensions, and that's essentially what I have. If you look at my dimensions, what I'm presenting it as is what it's going to be, is what it is natively. And sometimes you think because you have this width and height attribute in HTML that you could use HTML to make those adjustments, and that's not the case, especially not going down. Obviously, if you make the picture bigger, by editing the width and the height in HTML, you kind of run the risk of that image getting distorted. If you make the picture smaller, for example, if I use HTML to make this picture smaller, well, that's sort of wasted, because if I want this picture to only be a 172 by 247, then I could do that natively in my file, which is going to shrink the overall file size. So in the end, the first thing that you want to do with image optimization is keep the dimensions of the picture, the native dimensions of the file, to be the same as the intended dimensions you're going to be presenting them online. And really the only other thing to consider afterwards is file type. And file type plays a very big part in the overall size of the file. And when working with web with the web imagery, there's really pretty much three different file sizes, file types you're going to use: JPEG, GIF, or Ping. Now, the first thing just to think is you could just separate pings from GIFs and JPEGs from GIFs and pings. GIFs and pings are really only come into play if you need transparency. For the most part, if your file doesn't have any transparency in it that you need to bring onto the web, then you'll always use JPEGs, because JPEGs actually overall compress the file to the smallest file size while retaining the highest quality. If you do need transparency, then you're either going to use GIF or Ping. Now, Ping files, they will inevitably be the largest of the file size, but they also support the the greatest amount of transparency. Whereas GIFs, they'll make smaller file sizes, still not smaller than JPEGs, but they'll make them smaller file sizes than PNGs, but they don't support as much transparency. They only support very basic transparency. And I actually put two images on my desktop to kind of illustrate when you'd use one over the other. As I said, for the most part, you'd use JPEG most of the time because it's the best. It's always going to make the file sizes the smallest. But let's take this image for example. This is one of the Space Invader images. This thing, if you wanted to make it transparent, you see that I basically have, this is a two-tone picture. I got black and I got white. And this photo specifically is a JPEG, but if I wanted to make this transparent and I wanted these little the only thing to show is the black, and this white would be whatever I set the background color in my website to be, well, the best choice for this would be doing it through via GIF, because that GIF format is going to give me one transparent and then something that won't be transparent. Now, let me give you a good example of what you'd want to use the Ping format for. Now, you notice how this picture over here, his shadow is sort of a gradient, right? It's going to be, in some parts, it's going to be less dark than at the top over here. So what happens is that you're going to have essentially what are black cells in there with different opacity, and you can't have that difference with a GIF. Something like this would need to be a PNG file to keep the file size down. So that's essentially all you really need to know about image optimization, is keep the dimensions of the file that you want to be natively the same as what it's going to be displayed on the web, and pick the most appropriate file format. Just to sort of illustrate this, if you look at this picture that I have here, I have it as a JPEG. And if we just look through Dreamweaver, Dreamweaver has its own basic file editor. We see that as a JPEG, it's about 21 kilobytes in size. So if I were to change this format, let's just say to a GIF, you see how it already made that file size a little bit better. I'm looking right up here. Now, if I were to use it as a PNG, again, the file size is a bit bigger. So from JPEG, it was 21, the smallest, and if you keep your eye over here on the quality, see what it looks like. GIF, 22.9, so about 23, and we could pretty much say that the file size stayed the same. There wasn't any noticeable change. And the PNG was 23, the largest of them all, and you see that the file size over here, nothing really changed. So if at all those different formats it looks the same, we could still pick the best one, the best format for it to be a JPEG.